Have you ever wondered what happens when a government begins to fear its own people? When open discourse becomes a dangerous act, when gatherings are eyed with suspicion, and when wealth is systematically drained from the many to benefit the few. Does this sound eerily familiar? This isn't just a description of a modern authoritarian state, it's tyranny as Aristotle described it over 2,300 years ago. And he wasn't merely speculating, he had lived it. As a young man in Athens, Aristotle witnessed the brutal aftermath of the 30 tyrants, a short-lived but infamous oligarchy that ruled with an iron fist. Later in life, he formed close ties with Hermias, the ruler of Atarneus, who himself was labeled a tyrant. These experiences, combined with his deep philosophical inquiries, gave Aristotle a profound understanding of the nature of tyranny, its mechanisms, its appeal, and, ultimately, its downfall. His insights weren't just historical observations, they remain as relevant today as they were in the ancient world. But why should we care about the reflections of an ancient Greek philosopher on governance? Because Aristotle's analysis provides a framework for understanding political power that transcends time. He teaches us how to recognize both the subtle and blatant ways in which authority can be misused, even in societies that claim to be free. His philosophy allows us to discern patterns in the leaders we choose and the systems we uphold. So, let's delve into Aristotle's mind and illuminate the dark corridors of tyranny. For Aristotle, tyranny was not merely about a cruel dictator, it was a fundamentally corrupt system. In his monumental work, Politics, he dissects tyranny as a political institution with specific characteristics. He distinguishes it from other forms of governance, noting that both kings and tyrants may wield absolute power, but their motives diverge significantly. A true king rules for the well-being of his people, respecting laws and traditions, while a tyrant governs solely for personal gain, bending the state to serve his own interests. At its core, Aristotle defines tyranny as a perversion of legitimate governance. He describes it as a system that blends the worst aspects of both oligarchy and democracy, taking the economic exploitation of the former and the lawlessness of the latter. Interestingly, he points out that tyrants often arise from the least expected places, sometimes emerging from within democratic systems by manipulating public sentiment. This suggests that tyranny isn't always imposed from above, it can take root from within, especially in times of societal upheaval. In a tyranny, law becomes nothing more than an instrument of the ruler's will, and state resources are used to fortify his power rather than serve the common good. Traditional checks and balances are eroded, and power becomes centralized in the hands of a single individual or a close-knit elite. The people's welfare is no longer the priority, maintaining control is. Unlike a legitimate ruler who might step down when no longer wanted, a tyrant clings to power with all available means, making tyranny an inherently unstable form of government. But how do such systems come into existence? Aristotle challenges the simplistic notion that tyranny arises solely through conquest or hereditary succession. More often than not, he argues, tyranny emerges from within existing political structures, especially democracies and oligarchies. In democracies, aspiring tyrants often begin as charismatic demagogues, gaining popularity by championing the grievances of the common people against the elite. They present themselves as saviors, promising to dismantle injustice and redistribute wealth, only to later consolidate absolute power. Take, for example, Pisistratus of Athens in the 6th century BCE. He gained the people's trust by portraying himself as their protector, even staging an attack on himself to justify forming a personal security force. This force then enabled him to seize the Acropolis and establish a tyranny that lasted until his death. Similarly, in oligarchies, tyranny can emerge when one member of the ruling class outmaneuvers the others, using populist rhetoric or brute force to secure sole authority. What Aristotle keenly observed is that tyrants rise to power by exploiting societal divisions. When people feel disillusioned with their government, when economic disparities widen, political institutions falter, and trust erodes, they become susceptible to radical change, even at the cost of their own freedoms. In other words, the rise of tyranny is not merely about one individual's ambition, it is a symptom of deeper systemic failures. Once in power, tyrants employ a consistent set of tactics to maintain their rule. Aristotle meticulously documents these strategies, many of which eerily resemble those used by autocrats throughout history and even today. One of the first steps is the elimination of potential threats. Prominent citizens, those with influence, wealth, or military prowess, are either exiled or executed. Their property is often confiscated, not only to enrich the tyrant but also to prevent the emergence of rival power centers. But Aristotle observed something even more insidious. Tyrants deliberately keep their populations poor. It is a device of tyranny to make subjects poorer, he writes, because financial hardship prevents people from organizing resistance. Those who are struggling to survive day to day have little energy left to challenge the regime. Large-scale building projects, monuments, temples, or palaces, serve the dual purpose of draining public resources while keeping citizens occupied with labor. Another critical tactic is the cultivation of fear and mutual distrust among the populace. Tyrants encourage people to spy on one another, rewarding informants who report dissidents. This creates a culture of paranoia where no one dares speak freely. To control public perception, they manipulate education, media, and discourse, ensuring that only the official narrative prevails. A population that lacks the ability to think critically is far less likely to resist. Moreover, Aristotle notes that tyrants often prefer foreign soldiers and administrators over their own citizens. Why? Because locals have a stake in their own society and may eventually turn against the regime. Foreign mercenaries, on the other hand, owe their loyalty solely to the tyrant who pays them. Despite these oppressive measures, Aristotle observed that tyranny is ultimately the most fragile form of government. Why? Because it breeds resentment. No matter how powerful a tyrant appears, the weight of sustained oppression eventually incites resistance. Aristotle identifies several factors that lead to a tyrant's downfall: overwhelming hatred from the people, internal betrayal among the ruling elite, external military threats, and sometimes even the tyrant's own incompetence. He also notes that some tyrannies collapse not through rebellion but through gradual reform. Some rulers, in an attempt to reduce public hostility, slowly relinquish control, inadvertently opening the door for greater freedoms. Intriguingly, Aristotle argues that tyrants who seize power through their own cunning tend to hold onto it longer than those who inherit tyranny. The latter, having never struggled to gain power, are often weak, corrupt, and easy to overthrow. Ultimately, Aristotle saw the seeds of a tyrant's destruction embedded within the very nature of tyranny itself. Oppression and self-interest inevitably give rise to forces that will bring about its demise. So, what can we learn from Aristotle's profound reflections on tyranny? Do these ancient observations resonate with the political structures we see today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this exploration valuable and want to support more philosophical content like this, consider joining our Patreon. Your support allows us to continue deep diving into history's greatest minds and sharing these insights with you. Plus, as a bonus, you'll gain access to exclusive audio versions of our content for listening on the go. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep questioning, keep thinking, and stay free.